Okay. Hi, Shira. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so grateful to have you on. Keep yourself well.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Well, it's such an honor, and we always kick off the podcast with the kind of loaded question of how do you, Shira, keep yourself well?
Oh gosh. Um, I focus a lot on sleep. I have always been a person who's like 8 or 9 hours no matter what. So even now, as a busy mom and entrepreneur and juggling lots of things, I do try to be in bed every day by 10. With, varying results, but that's my goal. I really try to get a good solid 8 hours of sleep. And I drink water all day long. And I am a big fan of therapy, coaching, all of the self-help modalities. So whenever I feel like I'm struggling alone, I am a big fan of seeking help.
Oh, all amazing. Three priority pillars. And there's so many moms that are listening. So I love that you're kind of giving that encouragement, like not only to rest, which I know can be so much easier said than done, especially for moms, but also
Yes.
to ask for help. Like you can have your army, you don't need to do it alone. Incredible. So before we dive in, for people who've heard the term minimalism and might have some preconceived notions about it, what is your minimalism philosophy? I feel like we hear minimalism and we think about like, I don't know, having like a backpack on your back and nothing else, none of the things.
Totally. Yeah. No, people get very freaked out by the idea of minimalism. And I think, the kind of popularized version is like the stark white room with, three t-shirts and a fork. And so my version of minimalism is all about curating the exact right, perfect amount of stuff for you, based on your goals, values, and priorities. So that amount looks drastically different depending on who you are, what you care about, where you live, all the things. So it's a really flexible, customizable version, but it is about living more intentionally.
I really love that because it gives permission for it to be that kind of sliding scale and
Yes.
also immediately highlights one of the questions that I'm sure people have or maybe like the resistance to minimalism, which is like as your seasons of life change. So as you mentioned, you're a mother. I'm sure your version of minimalism looks slightly different once children are in the
Yeah.
picture and like, you
Sure
know,
does.
need need more to survive. So I love this. That is like such an, I think, a really tangible, digestible formula for people. And how did you find your way to minimalism? Was it like this has always been your journey, or are you like recovered maximalist turned minimalist?
Yeah, I would never say I was a maximalist, but I never thought of myself as a minimalist as a child. I think, I was raised by pretty progressive hippies who always really focused on experiences over things. Both of my parents lived abroad for much of their lives and prioritized travel, community, contribution, giving back. So I was raised with like a really anti materialistic philosophy from both of my parents, but I, unlike them, really did love things and I loved style and fashion and interior design. So there was sort of like a little push-pull within me, because I shared their values, but I also liked all the pretty things. So I feel like I kind of came up with my own unique form of minimalism that was about being very mindful and intentional about what I acquired and when I acquired it, but still having no guilt or shame about buying things that I loved and that I used and that made me happy.
Hmm. I think that's really healthy because I can imagine that people can have a lot of shame around like wanting to enjoy luxurious things, so still having that
Yes.
permission. And something that you highlight, it's not just about stuff, it's also about time and intention. So where does that kind of flexible minimalism that you're teaching people about today come into play?
Yeah, so I think it's really all about clarifying your values first before you even think about your stuff. It's clarifying who am I, what do I care about, and how do I want to live. And so for me, my kind of journey to minimalism actually happened when I became a new mom, because the pressure to consume was so big. And everyone was telling me, like, I needed this swing and this harness and this bottle and, all the gear, all the toys, all the things. And I just had this really strong resistance. Like, that's not how I want to live. The things that were really important to me from the get-go were travel and community and creativity. So I knew I wanted to build a life that supported that. And filling my house with plastic gadgets was not going to get me closer to that vision. So for me, it was like less about the stuff and more about the life. And I started helping people edit and organize their homes. It's been 15 years now, kind of right after I became a mom. So I now have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. And that's been a whole evolution in terms of stuff in our home. But what I found is every single person that I met, whether it was friends, colleagues, people in moms groups, everybody was talking about how overwhelmed they were in their lives, in their homes, the sense of like being buried alive by things and the burden of things. And so I kind of had this light bulb as I became a new mom, like it doesn't have to be this way. We get to be the gatekeepers of our home and decide what matters to us, what we want to bring in, what we want to buy, what we want to say no to. And so I very intentionally said no to most of the things that I was told I was supposed to say yes to as a mom. So that meant like less gear, less gadgets, like I kind of like, even with strollers, like I was like, that seems annoying. I'm going to just wear my baby in a little sling that takes up no space because we have a small home. So it was just kind of questioning everything. And through that, people started asking me, how do you do this? Why does your house look so spacious and clean and tidy all the time, even though you have a new baby and you're working full time? And I realized I was kind of onto something, and that something was as simple as living with less.
I like that. Question, yes, like questioning each opportunity to use something.
Exactly. Because we're told constantly, we're bombarded with messages saying we need more to be happy. And even, I'm on Instagram a lot for my business. I'm constantly served with ads that are very tempting. Like, oh, I need this new cute sweatsuit or this lip balm or this, whatever the thing is, feels so exciting and enticing. And then it's so hard to slow yourself down and really think about the cost of bringing that item into your home after the quick dopamine hit of being excited about it for 2 seconds.
Mhm.
Then it kind of instantly can become a burden. What do I now? I have to break down packaging, or, I have to find a place for this thing. I have to clean it. I have to maintain it. I have to organize it and, eventually dispose of it. And I find it's hard to slow yourself down to think about those things in the moment, when we're told that the new thing is shiny and will make us happy.
Right. Well, and then like the extra kind of, subtext under that is also like, if you don't, you're not a good mom. Like if you were the great mom, you would have all
Yes.
these things. So I think it's so
Yes.
important to rewrite that narrative. And also, like, I'm in a fairly rural area of Nicaragua. It is such a great reminder of, oh, like how little people need to be happy, how little people need to raise kids. Like nobody's got fancy gadgets here. Like there's probably a few things people would love and should and need to have. But they're not buying new things to have a baby. It's like you just make it work. And it's kind of allowed me to just really reevaluate like what I've seen, being raised in North America. So were you kind of born with this like organizing gene? Was this something that always came naturally to you? And when did that become your career?
So I think I was always really affected by my environment as a little kid. My parents divorced when I was really young. I was an only child. I went back and forth from house to house. And I think I felt this real lack of control in my life and my world and changing houses. And so curating an environment that felt good became this big form of wellness and self-care for me. So I always knew that. I never really thought of it as organization or minimalism. It was just like, I really need my environment to feel good. And it kind of carried me through like high school and college. I remember, even in college when I had like no money and a twin bed, I was like, how can I make this space feel good on a budget? And like, is it just simple white bedding and some fresh flowers that I can like pick from outside? Like, how can I make it feel good? So that was kind of the through line. And then I think once I had kids, it was like the burden of other people's stuff and, my husband's stuff. And how do you live in a way that is simple and promotes ease and enjoyment when you have four people and all of their things in one small space? So that got me really interested in kind of problem solving. And that's what I think of organizing as. It's just problem solving. It's like, where does this thing go? Where does this make sense? How can I make this easier? And as I started doing that for other people, just naturally, my business was kind of born out of helping my girlfriends, helping people in my mom's group, and people saying, you've got to do this. You've got to like turn this into something. So it was a very organic, like no business plan
Oh,
kind of a thing.
that's, it's so funny. Exactly what happened with me in terms of like personal training and nutrition. So I feel like that's just such a gift to have been given, where like you
Yeah.
have this innate skill and passion, and then, your tribe to encourage it. What had your career path been prior to that?
So I was an actor in the theater almost my whole life. Like from
What
the
a
time I
what?
was a little tiny kid. When I was 8, I was
Oh,
doing plays at UC Berkeley as like the kid actor and traveling around. I was a theater major and lived all over the world doing theater. And then when I got into my late 20s, so I had done theater for really almost my whole life. I knew that I wanted to have kids and a family, and the life of being an actor just felt really hard and unsustainable. Of like every night, every weekend, traveling, always having to book a new job, every few months. And so for a brief spell, I moved into food and catering and event planning. And when I was 8 months pregnant, I got laid off and kind of had this like, what am I doing moment. And that was really when my girlfriends kind of rallied around me and were like, I think you can start a business. I think you have something here. So it was really born out of desperation. Like, I need to figure out something to do. No one's going to hire me. I'm 8 months pregnant. And my friends are telling me I'm onto something. So I might as well try it.
go in. Well, yeah, and with nothing to lose, which I think is,
Yeah,
although terrifying and in hindsight, it all,
totally.
so it's fine, but it's just what a great opportunity, like to have that
Yes.
motivation. So
Yeah.
that's a cool story. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
so something that always comes to mind for me, at least how I see like on, oh my gosh, the TikTok, like restock videos and organizing videos, is that we see a lot of people like buying more in order to organize, which feels very contradicting and confusing. Like,
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
is it like, okay, you got to do like one step more before you can get better? Like, is that necessary when we're organizing our homes, downsizing our stuff? Or like, how do you suggest people start? Do we need the plastic acrylic organizers and all of the baskets and all of the things?
Yeah. Okay. So this is my favorite question, which I'm asked all the time. And so number one, no, you do not need to go buy plastic to be organized. Um, Organization is a skill, and it's as simple as grouping similar things together and giving everything a home. So you can be organized and not buy anything. That being said, the process that I teach is a 5-step process. I outline it in great detail in my first book, Minimalista. But in a quick nutshell, it's basically number one is you just clarify. Why am I getting organized and what do I want to accomplish? That is the most important step. Otherwise, you're just kind of buying random things and moving piles around. You've got to have a why. So the why could be as simple as like, I just want to find my keys, or I'm sick of losing things, or I want to save time, but you've got to have a compelling reason for getting organized. The step two is edit. So that's the decluttering step. It's stripping away what are the things that you don't use, you don't need, you don't love. The more you can get rid of, the better in this stage, because you really only want to be left with things that add value to your life. The rest is just going to be a burden. So, one, clarify, two, edit. Once you've edited and you just have the things you truly love and use, then you organize. And as I mentioned, organizing is very simple. A kindergartner can do it. I was a preschool teacher for a few years back in the day when I was acting, and kids can organize at the age of 3, because organizing really is as simple as putting similar things together, like with like, and finding a designated place for those things. You don't have to buy anything to do that, right? You just have to be intentional about your stuff. But then the fourth step, which I think is kind of like the fun cherry on top for people, is elevate. And so elevating is when you get to choose if you buy bins or baskets or matching hangers. For some of my clients who are really focused on living green and being sustainable, they choose at that point to repurpose something that they own, or use an Apple computer box, or a woven basket that they found. You don't have to buy anything, but you can, right? So in my house, like, I love having matching hangers in my closet. It makes my closet feel like a boutique for me. So that was a splurge that felt worthwhile. It's optional. And then the fifth step in the process is just maintain, right? So that's really practicing the 1 in, 1 out rule, putting things away instead of plopping them down when you come in the house, doing a quick 5-minute tidy or reset before bed. So you're never really facing that massive, daunting pile or cleanup. So those are the 5 steps. And as you notice, very few of them have anything to do with buying plastic
Yeah.
bins.
I really love that. And also that there's even like, there's the pre-steps to even getting to organizing to make sure this is all successful. Like, what is the point of doing this? Why do you really want to do it? And that maintenance step, which I think is where people really struggle. Like, how many of us have pulled everything out of our pantry or everything out of our closet and like had that pile of doom on our bed like multiple times? Like, I can vividly remember many times where I'm like, okay, but if I would have just kept up with it, we shouldn't have to restart back at, at square one. So I think that is so freeing. And something that I was thinking is, step number 4, elevate. If you do want to, like you said, make your closet then look like a boutique, or make something look, more lovely, it almost is like a little reward to the
Yes.
organizing step. So like, you have to commit to doing this first, organize it, edit and then organize it, and then treat yourself maybe to the things to like elevate it. I think
Exactly.
that's a good reinforcement.
Exactly. I mean, it's funny because whenever people hire me for organizing, they're like, okay, what should we buy? That's always the first thing. And I'm like, slow down. We're going to edit, we're going to organize, and then we're going to see what you need. And I promise I will help you find beautiful things if you need them when we are done. And then often, once people have like done this big edit and reorganized, they see their space in such a new light that maybe it's like, oh, I'm just going to buy a pretty basket, but it's typically far less than they thought they were going to need to consume.
I'm also thinking like, this really is kind of, minimalism is a lifestyle. So for someone's first question to be like, okay, what do we buy? Well, this is like, okay, we're changing. This is part of the problem. We're going to
Yeah, the whole
rewrite.
perspective has to
Yeah.
shift.
This is giving me, I'm like itching my brain to try to think of these shows that used to be on TLC when I was younger, where they would have
Yeah.
like home organizers come in. And I like loved, like, even that was so satisfying to like watch people's spaces become organized, which is now what you get to do for people all the time, which is amazing. So how has your life changed since you embraced this lifestyle? Because I can imagine if you started this when your kids were babies and now they're teens, that's
Yeah.
so challenging, because their needs and like, you know, incoming things and outgoing things are just constantly revolving as they grow as
Yes.
well.
I mean, I can tell you stuff wise, like the 0 to 5 is the most challenging. I mean, for me, that was the most challenging period of parenting, like baby and toddlerhood. And I'm loving the teen years. I adore spending time with my kids. They're so fun. They're so entertaining. Um, and they've gotten less and less stuff as they've gotten older, because not just because of my philosophy, which sometimes they resist because they're teenagers, but because they just want to hang out with their friends and they want to go do things in the world rather than, I don't know, hang out with stuff in their home, right? It becomes less and less about like the toys and the gadgets that, kids do like when they're little. And I think because of my philosophy, I've tried to really instill in my kids like the world is the interesting thing. It's not the toys or the gadgets. So we live in a 1,200 square foot bungalow, the four of us and our dog. We have a home that's over 100 years old and has two itty bitty closets in the whole space and no garage and no attic and very limited storage. And so it really keeps us constrained in terms of what we can own. And I think as a result, what's happened in my life and our lives is we do more fun things out in the world. So we travel, we go out to dinner, we host potlucks on our patio, we take hikes with our dog. But I think what I hear from clients is they spend so much time feeling burdened by their stuff and moving piles around and doing laundry and, even just sorting and organizing and decluttering, they don't get to go enjoy their time. And so the biggest gift for me has just been more time for the things I love doing and the people I love being with.
I really
Just
love
like
it.
the biggest gift of all.
Yeah, what incredible lessons to have, been able to share with them from such a young age. And it stood out to me right away that you said, kind of experiences over things, which is so valuable. And especially when you live somewhere so beautiful like California. So obviously when,
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky.
sorry, we have a little leg. Um, Obviously clients come to you knowing they need and want to change, but do you ever get pushback where like once they actually get started and are maybe getting challenged to do some of this, that they start pushing back and they're a little uncomfortable and like they want to change their mind? Like, I'm not that you're not lovely, but I'm to hire you because like once it comes down to it, they're like, no, no, no.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like typically by the time somebody hires a professional home editor and organizer, they're at the point where they've hit a wall and they're feeling real frustration in their life. So there is motivation to make a change that's pretty strong. That being said, yeah, I mean, it's really emotional work. I think most of my clients have cried at some point during the process, feeling stuck or frustrated or ashamed or guilty
Mhm.
about what they've acquired or how far they've let things go. It's very emotional work, and I think there are real hurdles that are super common for people, like the sunk cost syndrome of like, well, I spent all of this money on this thing, now if I just drop it off at Goodwill, isn't it a waste? Or the gifts and guilt thing of like, my mother or my friend gave this to me, am I a horrible person if I get rid of it? There's the very real thing for women of transitional bodies and like, is this going to fit me again if my body changes or I gain or lose weight? So I did become a certified life coach several years into my
Oh,
career as an organizer, mainly because I found like, oh, this work is so deeply emotional for people. And I want to have a bigger toolkit where I can help, coach through the obstacles and barriers that people face.
yeah. Oh, what a brilliant combination. So what does the process of working with you look like for a client?
Yeah, so it's I think it's lots of fun. So basically, I arrive at someone's home. We decide what single room or area we're going to tackle together first. So I'm really constrained about like, we're not going to run all over your home because you're just going to feel distracted and scattered. So we pick one space. So say it's like we're going to tackle your bedroom today. So the first thing I do is I ask, how do you want your bedroom to feel? What do you want to be able to do in your bedroom? And so say with that example, most people say something like, right now it feels really stressful and I go in here and I can't relax. I want it to feel like a sanctuary, or I want it to feel like a retreat where I can just like read and unwind at the end of the day without all of the distraction. So once we get a really clear vision, then I set up, big bins for decluttering. I usually have a bin for trash, one for recycling, one for things you want to give away, and maybe something that you want to sell for people that have, higher value things they want to sell. And then we basically do what I call like a sweep around the room, where we start in one corner and we just physically touch every single thing in the space, deciding, is this adding value? Is it something I use and love? And is it contributing to that vision that I just had in my head of the sanctuary, right? So then when people ultimately get stuck, like, oh God, I don't know, I'll say, okay, well, is this thing going to help you get the sanctuary that you have in your head? And that, like, anchoring it to a bigger vision really helps clarify for people. And typically they'll be like, oh yeah, no, this isn't going to be a sanctuary. This is just like going to contribute to more dust and more stress. So we do that big sweep edit. So I would say typically when people work with me, they get rid of 30 to 50% of the things that they own, which is high, right? I would say other organizers I've talked to and interviewed, it's a much smaller percentage, maybe like 10%. So I think a lot of what I do with people is like the deep coaching through that, reassessing your stuff and really making the tough cuts, because for me, that's been the most liberating thing. Is the less you own, the less you have to manage, the less you have to clean, the less you have to organize, and the more you can go out and live your life. So a lot of editing, I would say the bulk of the session is editing. And then towards the end, I kind of help organize and group like with like, and make sure that all of the things people want access to are at arm's reach and stored in a place that really makes sense. And then we'll wrap up by talking about the elevating phase. So if there's something that we want to add or swap out or elevate, I'll share resources. I'll source things for clients, and then kind of talk through a maintenance plan so they can keep and maintain the space they've just worked so hard to transform.
Yeah, I love that because it does. It gives that formula for long-term success. And also, this sounds super tangible. Like in a day, you see progress, which I think
Yes.
is really what people need to, like, oh my God, I feel lighter already.
Yes, I can do it, right?
Yeah. I love what you just said.
Yeah.
Like, it lessens the weight of responsibility that you have at home. So you do have more capacity to go out, enjoy life. Like, what a beautiful way to look around it. So obviously that is one of the benefits of minimalism. What are some of the other biggest benefits that you and your clients find from kind of doing less and owning less?
Yeah. So, I mean, so many benefits. I've had clients who have, like, just by reducing the volume of the things that they own, they have saved money, they've lost weight, they've started eating better. Like, the ripple effect is honestly incredible. And I think I've seen it affect relationships. I've seen it affect people's jobs, like people having this new clarity about their life, who they are, how they want to live. So quitting a job, starting a business, moving, leaving a partner, finding a partner, like literally every kind of bucket of life, I think truly is affected by this work. And it's almost like affecting change from the outside in. So like by changing your environment, you start to feel different about yourself and about your life. And so many people feel stuck in their lives and they don't know what to do or how to change. And I think your environment is such a powerful tool that people don't realize they can leverage to make a profound change about how they show up, how they dress, how they spend money, how they go through their day. all of that just by shifting your relationship with your stuff.
I love that because it highlights, I think it can be easy to get hyper fixated for people on what it's taking away. Like, oh, you're taking away all this stuff, but this, okay, we're taking away this, but we're adding into all of these other buckets that give you so much more. And one of those, I imagine, like really being our mental health, because like you said, you listed many negative emotions that clients, kind of work through with you. And when it comes to like consumerism, oh my God, like the social media and consumerism is just mind blowing. The hustle culture, like there's so much mental health strain in that. So, what has your experience kind of lived experience for you and working with clients over, over a decade with kind of, I think, a lot of change in that hustle culture and consumerism over these last 15 years been like? Do you still feel like it's a progressively more is more culture, or are we starting to realize maybe that is counterproductive?
I think the pressure has almost been heightened because of social media. I think there always used to be kind of a society-wide cultural pressure of like the nice home and the nice car and the nice things. But in my lived experience, the pressure has really multiplied because we're now being fed targeted ads on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and buying things is so much easier than it used to be. Like, just from that perspective, like we used to have to get in our car and drive somewhere and park and take out our wallet and buy something, right? And now I have clients who literally have an Amazon button in their home that they can hit and it will reorder all of their household supplies in 1 second. Like they've spent hundreds of dollars and have tons of boxes coming to their home.
Wow.
And so there's like the perk of the convenience of that for busy people, but there's also like how automated our spending has become, that you can buy in 1 second and it feels free and it's so easy and there's no friction. So I think that sense of like how easy it is to consume is, I would say, more prevalent than it's ever been in history. Um, and I think, yes, there are people like myself who are presenting a different version, a different way of living. I still think we're in the minority. And I get feedback all the time from people saying like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I discovered your work because I felt so much pressure from everyone in my life, from everything that I do. And it's so nice to see there is a different way of living that can be better. And I think you're right. People focus on what you're giving up when you declutter or embrace a minimalist lifestyle. For me, I can honestly say like there has been no downside. I have gained time, energy, freedom, money. I've improved my relationships. I travel more. I give back more. I contribute more. It's just been like a more is more. Like I've maximized my life through minimalism.
Oh, that's obvious. That is in your book. I just know it. That's such a good
I
line.
hope so.
I'm gonna put that in quotes and put it on my social media or something.
Oh, good.
I really love that. Yeah, this year for me, so I like, packed up and left in a suitcase to come to Nicaragua and had no idea how remote the area that I was coming to was originally. And when I tell you, it was so uncomfortable, like fish out of water, like crying, so dramatic. Now I'm fine. And guess what? A year later, I'm still here because
Wow.
there's no grocery store. There's no, like, you have to pay cash most places. A couple restaurants will take credit card, but you pay cash for everything. Even that, you're way more aware of your spending when you have to physically give cash, which we generally don't do anymore. There's no mail, so I can't order packages. There's no like, there's no just passive like, oh, look at that cute shop, like let me just see if there's something I need. So it really forces me to be like, okay, what do I need? If I want something, I have to really want it because it's like a massive pain in the ass to get it here.
Yeah.
And guess what?
Yeah.
I miss nothing. I miss that. I'm like, oh,
Wow.
this is great, like, so it's just
That's incredible.
it's allowed me to, and I feel like I can talk about it now because like a year's long enough that it's not like I'm just in the honeymoon of like you know, it's so romantic to like be remote and whatever. Like, yeah, there's some challenges. And like sometimes it is, like you said, ordering the household stuff on Amazon. Like there are times where that convenience is great. But I think more often than not, that convenience is counterproductive long term. So the benefit of not having that convenience, yeah, has been really interesting for me and has really forced me to kind of reevaluate like what is needed to be happy, and seeing other people live with, you know, very little. Like a lot of people here live in like thatch roof local houses and like
Right.
maybe have plumbing and maybe don't. And guess what? Like, yes, it's hard. And I don't want to speak for anyone's life that I'm not living, but like they appear to be some of the happiest people I've seen in my whole life. And they don't have the new whatever at Sephora. And I think for kids, so you said you have 13-year-old and a 15-year-old. And I just
Yeah.
always am thinking, like, God, what pressure for these kids. Like I've seen these like very young girls now going to Sephora and getting like crazy skincare and make like expensive too. And like just the
Yes.
pressure of trying to keep up with the Jones from such a young age now feels like too much for these little humans. It's too much for adults,
It's
you
so
know,
much
let alone
pressure. It's
little
too much
people.
for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, as a mom, it's been really interesting just because, I think as a mom, your kids, when they're little, care so much about what you think. And then there's sort of a shift when they're teenagers where it's like all about what their friends are doing. And, I love my kids' friends and they share shopping hauls with each other, like on social media. And it's so painful for me to watch because I'm like, what are we teaching when it's like sharing a Sephora shopping haul and like unboxing, like this whole trend on TikTok of unboxing pains me. So, as a mom, I don't let my kids have their own social media accounts, which it's very rare here. We live in a city and everybody has phones and everybody has social media. And I've just decided that I think not having social media is what's best for my kids. So
Love
so
that.
they're the only ones who don't. And it's super annoying for them. And I'm okay with it because I've just seen it as such a negative influence, even for me as an adult, having social media. I have to combat the pressures that I encounter every day in terms of like needing to buy that or the compare and despair thing. So I think a life of simplicity on some level is so healthy for people. And I was really inspired by my travel when I was younger and living in different cultures and seeing people who lived without so much pressure to shop and consume all the time. And they really did seem much happier. And in my own life, I find when I'm shopping, it's not because I need something. It's because I'm bored or I'm lonely or I'm restless. I'm trying to fill a hole. And so I think in a way, like I'm so envious that you live in a place where you can't numb out in that way. You have to figure out something better to do with your time that fills it in a more meaningful way.
Well, and you earlier said dopamine, and that's exactly what it is, whether it's food, and even that, you can't just like go grab a quick snack here. There's not, so like you really can't fill the
Mm.
dopamine rush. Now, there are people in the area that then it's like other negative habits like alcohol or whatever, but luckily not in that crew. But what do? We're outside all day. And like when you're in an area too, like I'm from Canada where in the winter months it's really brutal, and it's really brutal on people's mental health because not only is it so cold so that you can't just like go outside and enjoy a walk, there's also nothing to do, it's hard to get around. And so I think it's just we're more vulnerable to reach for like negative dopamine fills, you know, in those times. So here I feel so lucky because literally like we will walk on the beach 2 or 3 times a day, and like we don't need to do anything else. Like everybody here goes to watch sunset. Like it's an event. Like, what are you doing for sunset tonight?
Wow.
You know, go. And like you just
Oh.
go walk. Like last night I had a Diet Coke while I did it, and that was like the little thing. So, you know, I think you learn to enjoy like a life of simplicity, like you said. And I am really inspired by like as hopefully a future mom one day, I've always said, like, I don't want my kids to have phones or social media or anything. And of course, everybody is like, okay, good luck. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, just wait.
I'd like to think it's possible. And I realized that it would be hard. So the fact that you
It's
are
hard.
doing it, that's amazing, really inspiring. But just like minimalism, we don't have to just keep doing things the way that people have been doing them, especially when, it's obviously it's not making happier, healthier people. So that's it. I want to make sure people can leave with like well, they already have lots of great actual advice from you, thanks to you. What zones in the home do you think are the biggest problem, and that, like, just to add some quick value if people are feeling overwhelmed, are a good place to start focusing?
Yeah, I would say if you feel overwhelmed in your whole home, start with your entry, whatever that may look like. Like in our home, we don't have a proper mudroom or an entry closet, but wherever it is that you come in and kind of dump your stuff, whether that's like coats, bags, dog leashes, hats, sunglasses, I find like it's a magnet for clutter, whatever that entryway is in your home. And so doing a quick sweep, relocating things that don't belong, questioning, do I really need 5 black coats or whatever the thing is? And then making sure you have an organizational system for those things that get dumped. So I always say clutter is information. Be curious about it. Like if you see a pile of coats, maybe it's just because you don't have a hook. And then you can just solve the problem really simply, right? By putting up a hook or adding a basket to toss your shoes in by the front door. So that is a place I would say, like, make sure you have a place for the things that get dumped. The most common are mail, shoes, coats, and bags. So that's number one. I also would say, like, if you feel overwhelmed and you don't know where to start with your nightstand. Your nightstand or like the area next to your bed, wherever you have like, books or journals or things like that, also tends to be a magnet for clutter for people, where it's kind of a dump and pile zone. And I think whatever you see first thing when you wake up should feel beautiful, not overwhelming.
Yeah.
Oh, you just froze. Can you still hear
Oh,
me?
yes, I could, but I did see
Oh,
my
there you
video
are.
frozen. No.
Okay, no problem.
That's really great advice, because I think you're exactly, yes, like, sorry, as if I need to tell you, you're exactly right. You're the professional, but it makes so much sense. The first thing you see when you walk in and out the door, even if you're going to work and the last thing you see before you leave is like a mess of clutter, then you're leaving being like, oh dear God, I got to go home, and like, I know it's going to be there. And then you come in the door, and before and after bed, and working, I think then to make that bedroom a sanctuary, it's like you can start with small sections and then eventually hire you when they really need the full course. And, using resources like your books, because you've written a few books. I know you mentioned the first
Yeah.
book, and the next book is coming out right before the holidays, which is perfect timing, called Lifestyle. So tell us about the books and kind of what different tools they get in each book. What do we need, if what
Yeah,
book
perfect.
what we need?
Yeah. Okay. So if you're feeling overwhelmed in your home, I would say definitely start with Minimalista, which is my first book. It's available all around the world now and even in different languages, which is so exciting. And Minimalista breaks down my entire process and toolkit and tips and resources for how to edit, organize, and style your home. Every single room, I get into every type of clutter, every type of problem. It's really like a Bible of decluttering. So I would start there. My second book, which is a really fun kind of inspirational book, is called Organized Living. And for that book, I spent a year traveling around the world, interviewing the most organized organizers in the world. So I interviewed 25 professional organizing experts in cities like Paris, Mexico City, Vancouver, Stockholm, Lisbon, and you get to tour each expert's home, and learn from their tips. So we have minimalists, we have maximalists, we have people in tiny spaces, people in huge suburban homes, people with big families, people who live alone. So that's really a fun and very giftable book, that can be, a coffee table book. You just read one chapter at a time and take different tips from each expert. And then finally, my third book, which I'm so excited about, which is called Lifestyled, takes everything I've learned about decluttering and organizing, and applies it to every area of your life. So rather than just addressing your home, we talk about how to declutter your friendships and your relationships, how to set up systems so you see the people that you care about. I dive into everything from personal growth to personal finance to health and wellness and well-being, all through the lens of minimalism and organization. So it's really like a holistic personal development book.
Oh, how cool. Really meshing like that work that you've done on the life coaching. I mean, I think those all sound so giftable, amazing. And I know that you mentioned like that period having children like maybe 0 to 5 years old was the most challenging. What are like some of the specific tips and tricks and advice pieces that you have for people with kids? Just knowing that feeling of like stuff can so easily take over the house.
Yeah, I would say don't have more than five categories of stuff out at a time. So by category of stuff, I mean like big broad categories like Legos, dolls, books, art. I personally, and I was a preschool teacher for a few years, feel like all that kids really need to thrive are books and art and parents who love them. So I think everything else is optional. But most American households have lots of different types of toys and lots of different types of things. I think it can be really overstimulating for the kid and certainly overwhelming for the parent to manage. So I would say, my like quickest, easiest hack is 5 big vessels, and that can just be like a big oversized basket. It can be a shoebox, anything you want. Don't have more than 5 of those out at a time in your home or playroom or kids room, and make it really easy for you and the kids to clean up by having those vessels be open. So if it's like play food or Legos or whatever it is, it all gets dumped into one big open bin or basket at the end of the day. Don't over organize. Don't feel like you have to alphabetize or color code. That's all totally optional and only if it's fun for you.
So, well, and like you said, even a 3-year-old can organize. So I think that's also good
Yeah.
encouragement, like for the parents listening to, you know, delegate.
Yes, get your kids involved. That's the other thing that I find so many moms in particular are like sweating at night by themselves, cleaning up everything. And one of the most important things that you can teach your kids is how to clean up, how to take responsibility over their stuff. If you make a mess, you have to help clean it up. It's like a life skill they'll have forever. So do it with them, integrate it into your daily routine. So like in those transitional times, like before you leave the house, okay, we're going to do a quick 2-minute tidy, like toss everything back into the basket, right? So easy. And kids are used to doing that in preschool and for their whole life out of the house. So we know they can do it in the house. They just need the structure and the guidance.
Totally. Well, and make it like there's ways to make it fun and make it like a
Yeah.
game. Did you ever see the show Big Comfy Couch?
No. What is it?
Oh, I wonder, maybe it's Canadian. I don't
The
know.
Canadian thing?
It's like this girl, she was like a clown. I don't really know what the premise of the whole show was, but it was a kid's show. And she would have like a 10-second tidy thing. And it like
Hmm.
was very got you excited.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a preschool teacher, you turn on music, right? And like you're like, it's snack time, but like before that, quick tidy. And can you make a basket? Like there are ways of making it fun. Or like I always love a timer, like, let's see if we can clean up in 1 minute and then go get a treat, right? So it's like this is just on our way to the next fun thing. We don't have to spend a ton of time doing this. We can do it really fast together.
And then again, that reward. And a couple pieces of advice that you would really like to highlight out of the new book, based more on like the lifestyle areas, maybe specifically with kind of
Hmm.
like fall. I know really here feels like the new year for a lot of people, like back to
Yeah.
school and like holiday season is coming.
Yeah, I would say this is both a good exercise for home and life, is reflect and write down what you want more of in your life and what you want less of in your life. For me, whenever I do that exercise, and it literally can take 2 minutes, but things pop into my head instantly that I realize, like, I want less social media time in my life. I spend a lot of time on social media. So just the awareness of saying that out loud or writing it down, like the awareness is everything, right? Like awareness comes before action. And then thinking, what do I want more of? Like I always ask that to all of my clients. And it's interesting that people don't often slow down, even just to think about that. Like, what do I want more of in my life? And I think asking that, like, I've gotten all sorts of answers from people, like everything from like, I want to have sex more with my partner to like, I want to travel more, or I want to make time for art, or music or dancing or working out. But I think asking yourself those questions is always the springboard from which to take action. So I think just take the 2 minutes and give yourself that gift of thinking through.
I love that. Well, and then because it acts as a filter for everything else, like, okay, then is this new
Exactly.
purchase or is leaving this mess? Like, is that if I want to have more sex with my partner, is, buying more shoes when that pisses him off, or, creating more clutter beside the bed, like, is that conducive to that? So I think that's great. Thank you so much. This is so many great actionable pieces, and I really hope that people will go buy the books, because I think that it's going to be a perfect formula for everyone. And before you go, I want to ask you a few quick rapid fire questions.
Oh, fun.
One is, who is your biggest role model?
Mm, that's such an interesting question. I think it changes for me all the time. And right now, ironically, it's my kids. Like I know that sounds so cheesy, but I learn so much from my kids every day, and that's not something I expected as a mom. But I feel like the way that they show up, how present they are, how curious they are, how in the moment. I'm always thinking 10 steps ahead. I'm always like so goal oriented. And it really helps me to look at how my kids move through life, to help me slow down and be more present. So that is my honest answer in this moment.
Paul, what is the best advice you've ever received?
I received, can I give two?
Please, yeah.
Um, so my mom told me when I was young, you can do everything, but not all at once. And I always want to do all the things. I want to travel. I want to start a podcast. I want to be on a TV show. I want to write 10 more books. And I think I always am reminding myself of that. Like, it's okay to want to do all these things. Hopefully, you'll have a long enough life where you'll get a chance to dip a toe in, but you can really only do one thing well at a time. So that's my rule, is like one big thing a year, whether that's like writing a book or traveling the world. I try to have one big focus per year, and constrain my energy. And then the other was, I had a mentor and teacher, kind of a business coach, who said, discomfort is the currency to your dreams.
Ooh.
And I know you probably, I was looking at you and your history with like bodybuilding and all of these incredible things that you've done. And I can only imagine like how many hurdles and obstacles and challenges you had to work through, to get to that finish line. And so I think often, like, we feel, especially as we're growing into adulthood, like if things are really hard, that means stop or it's not right. And in fact, sometimes it means go. Like you have to move through this. You have to, not suffer through, but like be willing to be uncomfortable to get to the other side.
Oh, I love both. I'm such a nerd for good quotes, and I've never heard either of those. So thank you, because I'm
Oh,
gonna
cool.
adopt them forever. Best book or resource you'd recommend to people? Obviously, your three books are.
Sure. Aside from my books, I'm always coming back to this book called The Compound Effect,
Oh,
um, written by Darren Hardy. And it's really about how small, smart action compounds towards massive transformation. And that can be applied to anything. So it can be applied to, you know, walking for 5 minutes every day. You're going to be much healthier at the end of a year, even if it's 5 minutes a day. Likewise, like if you put away your laundry after you do it each week, you're never going to have that big laundry pile. And I just like using it for everything. Like when I get overwhelmed with a big goal, thinking, how can I achieve this 15 minutes at a time? How can those like small, smart, compounded action make a big win?
Oh, love that. I've not read it, but it is on the list. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
it's a real good one.
your personal mantra or words you live by?
Mm. I would say like always be curious. That's what I strive to do. You know, now that I'm an adult, like I feel like kids are so naturally curious and they're always asking questions and they're always looking up. Like adults don't even look up at the sky. Um, I love that you said you like go see the sunset. I feel like I'm often just like blasting through my day in hustle mode. And so trying to find those pockets of slowing down, being curious, looking around at my environment, and really being curious about other people and how other people live and do life, which I think is why I love travel so much.
I love that. Okay, and this is a bonus question for you because I need to know where is your favorite place that you've traveled so far?
Oh man, that's so hard.
Or top three?
um, I have been, I guess, Tokyo. I went to Tokyo with my brother, who's a chef. And he gave me kind of the foodie tour of
Oh,
Tokyo, which was really incredible. And we took my youngest daughter, Emily, and seeing her see Tokyo, like, was so incredible as a mom to like share this love of travel with her and my brother, who also loves travel. Um, that was pretty spectacular and just observing a culture that's so different. And so beautiful. Yeah, that was a real life highlight.
oh, how beautiful to be able to share that with your kids too. And because you said your parents really shared travel with you, what a lovely thing to be able to pass down. And last but not least, for everyone who wants to follow along and see what's up next for you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I would say the best thing is just my website is kind of the hub for the books, the courses. I have a free newsletter. And my website is just my name, Shira Gill. So ShiraGill.com.
Amazing. We'll link it all. And I cannot thank you enough, Shira. I have learned so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Put what I've learned into practice, and I'm looking forward to the next book in December. And well, you'll have to let me know if your travels ever bring you to Nicaragua.
Absolutely. Yeah, on my list now. Thanks so much.
Thank you.